The murder of this college student brings up the issue of women's safety once again. Think about it. Mollie was abducted as she jogged at night in her rural community, something her family says she did all the time. For that part of the conversation, I want to bring in Leslie Morgan Steiner. She has joined us many times before, joining me from D.C., a survivor herself of domestic violence. She's an author who's written about her experience and speaks openly and often about violence against women. You know, I think so many people think about in a time like this that this was just a mundane, everyday kind of event. She's out jogging, staying at her boyfriend's house, dog sitting, goes out for a run in a rural community that people probably don't lock their doors. But that's the reality about domestic violence. It is often in these mundane moments.
Well, it's the reality about violence against women. And yes, let me just state the obvious here. This crime was a man murdering a woman. And it's dangerous in our country simply to be female. And this was a really brazen crime. He clearly thought he was not going to get caught. And I think that we have to ask ourselves, what is wrong with our country that there are so many crimes of men feeling entitled and empowered to hurt women, whether it is sexual assault or domestic violence or sexual harassment at work or stalking or homicide. We live in a country that essentially has said for a very long time that it is okay to exert power and control over the women in your life. And it's a kind of toxic masculinity that we all have to work very hard to end.
But I'm going to be honest, and I don't disagree with you, but I would argue that it's the world over, is it not, Leslie?
Well, it's a very good point. We have it so much better in the United States than most women do around the world. And still, women face incredible risks. Just going about our daily lives, as Mollie Tibbetts was, just jogging in her community. Yeah. And also, the vast majority of domestic violence homicides happen in women's homes, and yes, that's where we're supposed to feel safe. So yeah, it's really something that we have to stop and say, how are we raising boys today, and what kind of messages is law enforcement giving men that it's so rare that men are caught and prosecuted for hurting women. This case is unusual in that the perpetrator has been caught and pretty clearly is going to be punished.
Well, you and I have talked about the backlogs of rape kits, right, in the country, and how that is part of this discussion as well. I actually want to pivot to another story that we've been following here on HLN, this Colorado father accused of killing his family, his pregnant wife, 2 young daughters. To you, and I know it's not lost on me either, there is a common thread in the murder of Mollie Tibbetts. There is, you know, this is a pure example of domestic violence, and it's that very thing that you talked about. This happened in the home. This is a couple that seemed happy and in love, yet look what happened.
Exactly, that's exactly right. In both of these cases, we have men who thought they could murder women with impunity. And there's something wrong with our society that they think that. And the case of Chris and Shannan Watts and the 2 girls and the unborn baby is really resonating within the domestic violence community because so many of us victims feel like that could have been us. You know, everything looked really good on the outside and it was so troubled on the inside. And the takeaway here is that domestic violence can be lethal. It quite often is, and we should take victims' concerns very, very seriously. And we victims need to take our concerns seriously, too. And also that these perpetrators, they might be monsters on the inside, but Chris Watts is a really typical domestic violence abuser in that he looks so good on the outside, and so many neighbors have come forward to say that they were shocked. This is typical. It's not an anomaly. Things can look fine on the outside and be very troubled behind closed doors.
But here's the thing, and this is such an important point. We have to make a space where someone can speak up. Maybe in time we'll learn that Shannan had confided in girlfriends or family members that she was afraid, or we may not, because she may have suffered in silence.
She may have suffered in silence, and also one of the hallmarks of intimate partner violence is that your denial is so strong. And when I was being abused, I was being strangled and having loaded guns held to my head, I would have told you that I wasn't a battered wife, that I wasn't a domestic violence victim, that I was a strong, smart woman in love with a troubled man. And perhaps that's what she thought too. There's so much pressure on women to work on marriage and to be forgiving of the men in our lives and to understand them. And some of the most wonderful women among us take this way too far and aren't able to put themselves first. And that's something else.
What was the turning point for you, Leslie? Because I think that's an important way to close the loop and wrap up our conversation. Because you went from not believing it to believing it. What was the defining moment?
I had two friends, very kind, loving friends, who confronted me about the changes that they saw in me and that they were concerned about me. And then also there was one final beating where he came very close to killing me. And I realized that he would. I realized how much danger I was in, and it didn't matter how much I, quote unquote, loved him, that he would take my life. And I wonder if maybe that's what happened to her too, is that she had that moment where she realized that her own husband might kill her. But at that point it was too late, because he had gone over the edge, and he again wasn't afraid of being caught, because so often perpetrators are not caught and not punished. But fortunately in this case, the only good news in this case is that Chris Watts was caught quite quickly, and it's looking pretty clear that he is going to be punished for what he did.
Leslie Morgan Steiner, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're willing to share your testimony, your life story, and to fight for other women who don't have a voice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is how we end it, by talking about it. So thank you very much.